Oilers Now digital content is sponsored by Legacy Heating and Cooling. No payments and no interest for a year. That's how you build a legacy.
All right, you made it back in oil country. I watched you last night. It's quite ironic. The person I was watching the game with at the JW Marriott as Brett Kulak scored the game winner. I was actually, I saw Jerry Johansson and Rich Winter and Manny D'Souza and Scott Bonner earlier the night. Of course, Brett is represented by Jerry Johansson, but I'll tell you, how did we talk about injuries and the Oilers didn't have, McDavid was, compromised, so was Draisaitl, clearly so too was Dickinson. Henry couldn't play. And people say, well, don't make excuses, Stauffer. Well, you worked the series, Louie. Is there any way that Minnesota extends that series if they'd had a healthy Joel Eriksson and Jonas Brodin going up against McKinnon's line?
Great argument. I would probably suggest yes, because the games were tighter than the score showed, in my opinion. I think each team, when they won the first four games, the winning team had 5 or more goals, but the games were tighter than that. Brodin's an excellent shutdown defenseman. We've seen him go up against McDavid for years. He has the skating ability to be one of those guys. They really relied on him in that role. Didn't have him. Really hurt their back end. Put a lot more stress on, in my opinion, Quinn Hughes, who played a ton of minutes in the series, and also Brock Faber. Eriksson Ek has developed into one of the best defensive forwards in the game. He's getting comparisons to Bergeron the way he plays the game in a left-handed form. He's a big guy. He's got an offensive touch now. And for me, the guy that suffered the most from that was Matt Boldy. Now, Matt Boldy had some good games. I'm not going to take that away from him. But when Eriksson Ek was the centerman between him and Johansson, that line became really formidable. And it was a little bit top-heavy, I felt, the Minnesota Wild. And the Avalanche knew that. They played that top line hard. They played aggressive. It was a matchup head-to-head with the top two lines pretty much for the entire series. I know they started the second lines in game number 5, but the Avalanche, give them credit that when they needed to find the goal, when they needed depth to step up and score a big one, they did, and it was great to see Brett Kulak score the game-winning goal in overtime, his first ever overtime point and goal in 21 appearances in an overtime game in the Stanley Cup playoffs. He's been around for a while. Had a great conversation with him that morning, and listen, it was a whirlwind year for him.
Crazy.
He really enjoyed his time in Edmonton. He loved Edmonton, and but he found himself on a really good team at the end of the year, and he's got a very good chance of winning a Stanley Cup.
He does. There's no question about that. All right. Well, for the Edmonton Oilers, it is cup or bust, Louie. And we knew this as the Edmonton Oilers were being eliminated by the Anaheim Ducks. And you know what? We might have known this when Edmonton lost in Calgary before the Olympic break, and Leon Draisaitl said everybody needs to be better. He said he needed to be better. He said the leaders need to be better. He said the coaches need to be better. Then fast forward to the game against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Leon's out. Connor McDavid spoke after the game about the great structure that John Cooper's team played with. And then the Oilers lose Game 6 against Anaheim. They go down. And again, they had injuries, but Anaheim were the better team in the series. And, after the game, Connor said the team was average this year. And then we had the end of the year exit interviews with the media on the Saturday. Stan Bowman went first, said there's going to be an evaluation. And then we had a scenario, Louie, where both Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, and we want our players to speak. And they spoke, and they said this was a regression this year. So all those factors being combined, are you surprised that Kris Knoblauch was relieved of his duties?
I was, yes. You know what? I'll be honest with you. We had a conversation last week where I said the lineup going into the playoffs fully healthy, I like that roster. I like their chances to go on another run. It was the best lineup they'd had all season long. So when you look at it in that regard, too many guys were nicked up. Too many guys were banged up, and I don't think you can get an honest judgment of how that team fared against the Anaheim Ducks. So give them credit, found a way to win a series. And we're young, we're fast, we're physical, and took it to a team that was compromised. But yes, you said this is a cup or bust city. It's funny. That's what Jared Bednar said after the game. Last night in one of his press conferences, he talked about that mentality in Colorado, and he said he wouldn't want it any other way. And I don't think any player in the dressing room for Edmonton wants it any other way either. They want that responsibility. They want that pressure because that's how they feel and that's what they want to have happen. And I think the coaching staff would say the same thing. But Yeah, listen, this is the 10th coach for Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. I believe it's the 12th coach that I will deal with, potentially, in my tenure here in 18 years covering this team as a media member. It's here we go again, I guess, is what I think of when I see that Kris Knoblauch was relieved.
Are you surprised?
His first year,
Are you surprised? Are you surprised at that?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah.
Are you surprised?
Once Stan Bowman said on the Saturday that he was going to go through an evaluation process, and I knew that was going to include exit interviews, and some of the comments that have been made before, I wondered, and how important the upcoming year is, Louie. You know, I got to tell you, I thought that this could be a potential thing that could occur. You know, it could be a potential thing. How would you assess his body of work?
It's been rumored already. It certainly got out there.
Yes.
And it was there again. This league has a wonderful way of leaking things really well, and nothing seems to be secret in this league anymore, which is kind of the way it is now. That's the animal that it is. But yeah, you know what? I guess for the next person coming in here, whoever that is, they've got a job to do. Because there's only one way that it's a success, and that's if they win a Stanley Cup. So with the pressures that have been put on this team and with the mentality of this team right now, that cup or bust is never more prevalent than right now.
Fair comment, and I do want you to know, I don't know if you saw the availability because you might have been flying in this morning, but Stan Bowman did say, you know, he's culpable for some of the things that he said. We made some bets on some players and they didn't perform at the level that we expected to, and I have to own that as general manager of the team. And he talked about the fact that this was never an easy situation. And you know, another thing that needs to be factored in here, as you know, is Kris got a 3-year extension. That extension hasn't even kicked in yet, so this has to be improved by,
I just said,
ownership as well, right? So, all right, Louie, I'm going to ask you about a couple guys. You know Bruce Cassidy well. Vegas won the Stanley Cup with him. They had a tough year with him this year. A lot of people, Elliot Friedman says Bruce Cassidy's the top coach out there. I don't know if Edmonton's ever going to get permission to talk to Bruce. I think we can both agree it needs to be an experienced guy, likely a guy that's won before. What would if you were looking at some coaches, who would you have in the mix?
Well, I just want to correct you a little bit. I don't know Bruce that well. I watched him a lot when he coached my kid, but I don't know the person individually.
Okay, good.
I know him as a coach.
Okay.
But I'll tell you this, I understand why that mentality is out there, because he's a defensive coach. His system, that's what he coaches. He coaches defense first. It's a stingy brand of hockey. It's been successful. The question I have is it the right personnel to play that system? Because I think it's pretty much the same system that Kris Knoblauch was trying to preach as well. So why didn't it work there?
Right.
So that's kind of, for me, what I'm looking at here. But yes, defense is the key. So for me, I know a lot of players stepped up and said we have to be put better to a man. Everybody has to be better. Well, it's time to go out there and do it on the ice now. It's time to go out there and be better defensively on the ice. It's time to go out there and buy in and play a system that makes you a very difficult team to play.
Yeah.
And until, from the top to bottom, they buy in and do that, because when they did, they played very well this year. When they did, you could see it starting to come. But it wasn't consistent enough. It wasn't on a nightly basis. And quite frankly, that to me is going to be the key issue with whoever comes in here. But I can understand why it's Cassidy, because that's the way he coaches. He did it in Boston for years. He did it in Vegas. They won a Stanley Cup. I understand that. But for me, it's going to be whether or not he can get this team to buy into that and do that, if he is indeed the coach. The other candidate, potentially Craig Berube, a Calgary native right here in Alberta. He's won a Stanley Cup in St. Louis in a similar type of game plan where they were a stingy, hard-nosed, aggressive defensive team. Now, they had a great back end on that team in 19. They had some terrific leaders and game breakers up front, but they also had a total commitment to buy-in. And, by the way, a super hot goaltender in Jordan Binnington that came in January and absolutely ran the table, right? So, he's been there. Couldn't necessarily get that done in Toronto. They relieved him of his duties, but There's another guy that I think is a veteran coach that's been around for a while now, has won a Stanley Cup, also could be consideration. Other than that, there's not a whole lot of names.
What about Peter Laviolette? What about, sorry, Louie?
Laviolette's the other guy. Jack Michaels and I talked today, and his name came up. And there's another guy that's won, veteran coach, has been in different organizations, and he usually has a tendency to stick around for a while too, right? So he's been a guy that's been on different teams, and I've covered, his teams in the playoffs multiple times. He has a template and a game plan, and he's pretty good at getting his guys to buy in. So that, again, is what I think is the most important factor for me, an ingredient for a coach coming into this environment, is to get this group of players, and there'll be some changes obviously to the team that's going to ice for the game number 1 next year, but essentially it's going to be relatively the same. You're going to have the same core, you're going to have most of the same players. Can you get them to buy in? That's the key, and that's why I think you're saying it, people are saying it, and I agree with it. A veteran presence coach that comes in and understands how to put a template out there and then demand the most out of each player individually.
Yeah, absolutely. You watch Colorado. Does anybody touch them?
Well, you know what? Carolina's looking pretty good in the East, I'll tell you. They've got a really good thing going there. 3 conference finals in 4 years. They're well coached as well. Rod Brindamore, there's a team that has an identity. They play down their lineup. They play a committed game. It's the goaltending in Carolina. If they get goaltending, they're going to be really hard to beat. I think they have depth. I think they have a great back end. They've got some guys really stepping up. Taylor Hall is having himself a whopper of the playoffs. That second line is just fantastic.
I'm so happy for him, Louie.
Yeah, for Stankoven. And he'd already played the same way in Boston when they had the big year where they broke the record for points. He was a very similar player in Boston that year where he was down the lineup a bit, but he produced over 50 points or right around 50 points. Like he can drive a line, but he's got a young centerman and a young winger in Blake on his right-hand side. And you know what? I think that they're buzzing right now. And with Jordan Stahl as that bona fide third-line big guy that can shut you down and play those meaningful minutes and hard minutes, they've got a really sound team. I've covered them in the playoffs before too, and they were really close to taking out the Rangers the year the Rangers went to the conference final a couple of years ago. And it was a really close game. It was Kreider with a hat trick in Game 6, or else it was going back for Game 7 to New York. But they have been knocking at the door for a few years now. So that's, to me, the team to beat in the East. But you know what? I look at Buffalo and Montreal, and I think either one of those two teams, because they can score, because of the style they play, styles make fights. That'll be a great one. No matter who Carolina plays, Buffalo or Montreal, they're going to have to be on their game and be perfect, because both those teams can make it pay offensively. But I do think that Colorado's the best team in the West. The key for me is Cale Makar's banged up. We saw that he had shoulder issue in the game last night where he had to leave for a little while, come back. He was hit hard by Marcus Foligno in Game 1. He missed essentially the first period. He was dealing with an injury coming into the playoffs. So that's going to be really, really essential, important for the Avalanche, who are starting to get nicked up a little bit. That was a physical series against the Minnesota Wild, but that is the playoffs. But they look like they're a mature group and a determined group, and they've been there before. They have nine players still on that roster that won the Cup in 22, so they're pretty seasoned, and they understand what it takes to win.
Louie, really appreciate you squeezing us in today. Thanks for joining us on Oilers Now.
Okay, Bob. Take care.